Take your kid who just won't and help them be the kid who will. Hey guys, thanks for joining me this week. I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Randi Rubenstein. She's founder of Mastermind Parenting Podcast, and author of The Parent Gap. So welcome, Randi. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
I'm so excited to be here.
So listen, guys, Randi has a site. She has some groups. She has a podcast. But one of the things she talks about is parenting strong-willed children. So I hope that resonates with a lot of our listeners. I have a strong-willed child, or 2 or 5. And so talk to me, Randi. Tell me a little bit about how you got into this, and talk to me about your strong-willed child.
Well, like I said, right before we started recording, mine is now 24, and I would not define him anymore as strong-willed. The funny thing is all people at some point, all kids are strong-willed, because that's just the term we use when they won't do the thing that we want them to do. Right. And I think it's, we're humans. We're supposed to not want to do exactly what is asked of us a lot of the time. And so I gave birth to him, and the way I'd really define him is a highly sensitive person, which is, that's a term that a lot of people know. And it was coined by, I believe she's a psychologist, Elaine Aron, and it's called Highly Sensitive People. I read a book when my son was about 10 called The Highly Sensitive Child. And I was already a parent educator at that time. I had been, basically researching and learning and studying things that I never thought in the world I would have been interested in before I became a mom. But when I had him, I thought you just have a baby and they're just adorable and it's easy. And I'm a pretty, headstrong person. And so I was like, how hard is this going to be? And then I had the baby that wouldn't stop crying and wouldn't sleep and it was just like every stage I was just like, can I catch a break? And then when he got a little bit bigger, it was like I had to have eyes in the back of my head, because it just seemed like he was sort of always pissed off. Yeah. And I just was on this mission. I was like trying to figure him out. And so I was reading all these things. Then my husband would be like, it's like you're cramming for a college exam. And it was like I was on a mission to solve this problem, which really it was to solve the problem of this challenging kid that I gave birth to. And I started learning all these things that before I knew it, it shifted from him to sort of me. And that happened when he was about 7. And I started learning a program that was really designed for teachers called Conscious Discipline. And Conscious Discipline, now they say that they're I think it's a trauma-informed neuroscience, classroom management program for teachers. So basically, it's what is happening in your brain, adult, when you have this very difficult kid and you find yourself in a triggered moment. Because when we're in those triggered moments, that's when all the fantasies of the parent that we were going to be go out the window, and all of our own conditioning that we swore we weren't going to do comes online, right? And so I found it fascinating, like, oh, this is why my dad lost his temper so much. This is why this thing is bothering me so much, and why I'm so hell-bent on figuring my kid out. And I think I got to kind of look inward and figure myself out a little bit. So, by the time he was in 9th grade, I had been teaching these I had been basically helping to train teachers and teaching these parent education classes in my little community, super small scale. And people kept trying, they would take my classes and then they would try to hire me. And so I said to my husband, I need to go I think I need to become a therapist, or I need people keep trying to hire me one-on-one, and something about it felt like I was like, I'm worried I'm going to get in trouble. I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this way. And so I started graduate school for a counseling program for about 3 seconds. And then I realized very quickly that I'm not going to spend the next 3 years learning someone else's method when I already have my method. And I have a really good friend who's a psychologist who actually had hired me to be her parent coach. And she was like, you've got it. You've got it. You do not just start a business. And I was like, I don't know how to start a business. I've been a stay-at-home mom and teaching these parenting classes and working with teachers, but really mostly on a volunteer basis. Like, who am I to start a business? I don't, I have a college degree, but I don't have a business degree. I don't know how to start a business. So once I started graduate school and I studied for the GRE and I did that whole thing and I got in, and then 3 days in, I was like, holy shit, I need to get my money back. Like, oh, yeah. Do you mind if I curse on this? Okay. And so I was like, I better get my money back. So then I said, well, what do I do? So I started looking at coach certification programs, and after watching probably, and this is like 2013-ish. So I feel like it was almost like the beginning of the webinar craze. And so I started, watching all these webinars, and I decided on this coaching program by this brilliant, quirky woman named Martha Beck, who's also an author. And she was, Oprah Winfrey's life coach and all these different things. And so I went on a call and I liked her and I thought she seemed honest. And that's when I went through my coaching certification and it was about a 10-month process. And actually it was my training that didn't certify me. I really liked her quality control for coaching, because it wasn't like go and, in a weekend you can have your coach certification. I really worked hard and I had to do like 100 hours of free coaching. And so I really felt like I kind of honed that craft. And once I completed my coach training, because I'm a very action oriented, quick start kind of person. For anybody who has taken the Colby, I'm a big fan of the Colby assessment test. So I immediately took the test to get certified. And once I did that, I married all those years of, the parent educating piece, a lot of from conscious discipline, but also many other things I had learned and frankly been practicing with my own kids. And I married the two. And then a couple years later, that's when I decided I need to trademark and have my own method. And that's pretty much the essence of Mastermind Parenting. So strong-willed kid just led me on this path. And now I'm a business owner, and I'm so grateful that I had a strong-willed kid, because if I hadn't had him, and I have 2 other children, but if I had had them, and if I had had them first, I don't think I would have had the impetus to start all of this. I didn't set out to do this. And then once I kind of figured out my process and my kid was doing so much better, and I learned so much about myself, I was like, my husband was like, what's your, like, you're working all the time. What about me? And, and I said, he's like, do you want to make a lot of money? Like, what's really your goal here? And I said, my goal is, I feel like it's selfish not to share this thing that we've figured out, because I just know we can help a lot of people. And so that's what I'm doing.
I love that. It's a beautiful story. And thank you for sharing that. So I'm interested because so my kids are also grown. They're 27 and 28. And I have a strong-willed child, and she is the youngest. And I have a lot of friends with 2 kids, and all of us have said the second is the hardest, but your first was your hardest. So that's interesting. And it did lead you on a path. But your second and thirds were easy sailing, or, not the same?
I'm boy, girl, boy. So my daughter is in the middle. you know, she kicked my ass in many ways too, but mostly just because teenage girlhood. I mean, I I mean, when she started middle school, I had been teaching these conscious parenting classes. I was a little cocky. Like I was like, yeah, teenage girlhood's going to be nothing. And she started middle school and I just all of a sudden was like realized like I had a bunch of unresolved old gunk from when I had been a teenage girl. So I will say that, you know, my daughter's now 21 and I just spent the summer with her in California because I can work remotely, and she goes to school out there, and she was doing a really cool internship in San Diego. And, you know, she was like, I don't know, I can't find a roommate. And then I said, well, why don't me and the dogs come out there and I'll be your roommate? So, you know, we're super close. And I feel like in many ways, I grew up and had a second chance to do it over again while she went through the teenage years, because I faced myself in so many ways, because I think it's painful, you know, when I believe it is harder to be a teenage girl than a teenage boy. And you know, when all of a sudden she hit middle school and, you know, the shenanigans start because it's all of, you know, queen bees and wannabes and mean girls and all of that. There was a lot to figure out. And what I realized was I had a lot of armor from that helped protect me and get me through those years. And I wanted to release that armor. So yeah, she, you know, she represented something different. And then my youngest child, who is 16 and a junior in high school, yeah, it's just for the most part, he's only been raised with this. And I was 35 when he was born, so I was a different version of me. And knock on wood for him, he's just been easy street. So yeah, I mean, you know, he's normal. He right now he's in that talk to the hand phase.
Yeah.
And that's normal. You know, that's what teenagers are supposed to do. It's like we think that 3-year-olds aren't supposed to be difficult. And we think that teenagers, like they're not supposed to be difficult. And if you study human development, it's like when babies are born, we're like 10 fingers, 10 toes. Whew, okay, great. You know, like,
True.
you know, or I had this like crazy fear that my child was going to be born. I don't know. I must have like read a book about hermaphrodites at some point, and I was so worried. I was like, okay, is it just a penis or just a vagina? Like that was another one I was worried about. But like when they become, did you know you were going to get all this? But when they become 3 or 13, like, oh, challenging me. Oh, you know, 3-year-old trying to figure out, where do I stop? Where does mom start? Oh, I'm not an appendage of my mom anymore. I'm trying to make sense of the world. I need to be constantly empowered with 2 positive choices. Like that is normal. And then when they're teenagers, like it's a fact that teenagers are supposed to be pruning away extraneous information. So they challenge everything because they want to figure out, okay, what do I want to bring with me that you've implanted in me? And what am I ready to prune away? But we resist it because we just don't understand it, you know? And so, yeah, so he's, you know, he's in that phase of, it's not like it's smooth sailing or he's like, I love you, mom, you're the best. A lot of the time he's like, how many more times are you going to say that? I just want to be prepared. But he's a normal teenager and it's been pretty easy with him.
It's been funny because I'm going to dial back to something you said earlier was, you know, that when you reach your parenthood state, you think you just have a baby and it's easy and all, you know, you count their fingers and toes, you're blessed. Okay, great. Let's move on. And you also have this thought or plans, the things that you're not going to do that your parents did. Right. So my girls, I got 5 grandkids in a little less than a year's time. And that was through adoption and fostering and a variety of ways. But I've watched my girls turn, they're blossoming into moms, and it's been really fun to watch them and really interesting, their takeaways. And my husband and I will, talk about things that happen in the family or at night. And we laugh because, they were the kids that are like, I'm never going to make my kids do chores. I'm not going to have them cook. I'm not going to do this, and all the things that they're not going to do. And then watching the kids come back to me, and they've done it individually at different times, but they've both come back and said, you and dad really just made this parenting thing look real easy, and it's not.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But it's also kind of funny because I'm like, did we, we weren't the kind of parents, we didn't shield them from a lot of things. What you see is what you get from me, typically any day of the week. And I didn't hide things from them. I exposed them to a lot of the things, and I was blessed with really good kids. They wanted to act up a little bit, but my youngest is the sass. Her name's Ashley, and she knows she's sassy. And so to the cursing point, we call her Ashhole sometimes.
That's so good.
And my other daughter's name's Brittany. We named her Bratney as their nicknames when they were younger. But it's true. They have strong wills. They have their own mindset. They have their own things. And then I'm watching it in my grandchildren because of the way we've acquired our family and the way the dynamics of it has come together. We've got a 13-year-old grandson, a 10-year-old grandson, an 8-year-old grandson, and a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old granddaughters. And watching them with the babies, plus watching them instantly become parents and adults of older children in a variety of ages has been a challenge for them because, Brittany's 28 years old and she's got a 13-year-old. And
wow.
Yeah. But when he came, he was only 10. So, he's grown a lot, and I'm watching him grow, and I only raised girls. So I struggle with that connectivity piece to the boys because I don't know anything about superheroes, admittedly. I was making my Christmas list, and I'm like sending it to Brittany, and I'm like, okay, does Nevin like this one, or this one? And she's like, those are villains. Those aren't heroes. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. There's such a big difference. But it's been interesting, because we have the dynamics and the fostering that happened. And, Brittany and her husband wanted to adopt a sibling group because they wanted to keep them together. And, when you get foster children, they don't come from all happy made homes. There's a lot of challenges and nuances there with the life that they lived before coming into your life. And so watching them navigate those waters has been really cool as a parent. And then, my husband will look at me and say, they were listening because, we watch them repeating. And I think that's been my biggest takeaway as a parent is if I had to give somebody, I'm 51 today, advice, I would say, your kids are going to do what you do. You can tell them all day long what you want them to know or what you want them to do, but they mimic what we do. And that's been my biggest takeaway in watching my girls become moms themselves.
1,000, I say they learn by our example. They really are watching us way more than they're listening to us. And you're 100% right on that.
Yeah. So it's been fun. And, it's been interesting too, because Ashley's little one, Emmeline, just turned 1 on the 8th of October, and Emmeline just at 1 is showing those signs of that, independence and similar to Ashley in those ways. And then watching Brittany, Brittany had a little sister, Ashley they were only a year and 8 days apart. And, now one of her children is like a baby Ashley. So she's got her little sister she's raising, and she's just kind of like, ah. And it's so comical because Ashley's that child that never hushes. Like she can talk your ear off from here to eternity. She could call you, you could set your phone down for an hour, watch a movie, come back, she's still talking. So, and everybody that knows her and herself knows that. But it's been funny because JJ, or one of our grandsons, that's Brittany's child, he's a talker, and he's the mini Ashley, and he's just the aggravator and the instigator, and in such a fun, sweet, loving, and cute way. And it's fun to watch Brittany have to parent her baby sister when she didn't have to, because now she can understand like my mindset as a mom of how I was navigating raising Ashley versus Brittany, because they're polar opposites. Even though they're siblings, you couldn't find two more kids that are opposite of each other. And it's just been such a journey, you know?
Well, I mentioned that assessment that I love that really is a corporate tool for teams, right? The Colby is all about how each of us is wired to solve problems. And I love that tool and I use it because I quite often teach people your family is a team, so just like your work team, or just like if you ever played a sport, your soccer team, which I didn't play sports, I'm not even going to use the right terminology, although I've sat as a spectator in enough sports that I should know what all the positions are, but I don't. But like if you're going to have a winning soccer team, like there's one goalie. So if you have a whole team where their zone of genius is goalie, like you're kind of screwed. And so we're meant to all bring different skill sets to the team, right? And so the things that you just said about your girls, it makes me think, oh, well, Ashley sounds like she's the team member that's like the true extrovert, like the one who is energized by human interaction. Like she wants to engage. She has things to tell you. She has things to teach you. She's going to keep it alive and lively. And, and maybe her big sister was more introspective, maybe more of an observer. And if you think it's like when we're all, if we're sitting, with our work team members, and you have, you're trying to figure out a marketing problem or there's a new project and you got the person who's the project manager and that's the detail person. And then you've got the person that's the content creator and maybe the visionary and the creative person. And then you've got the person who maybe somebody at some point in their life told them that they were ADD and there was something wrong with them, but they are the idea monkey. And they're like, hey, well, why couldn't we try this thing? And what about that thing? But there might be so they have all these amazing ideas, but there might be also a little too much impulsivity there. So then you got the person who is more of the introspective person who's like, all valid ideas, let's write them down and have a plan and circle back, like where you're going. And we have a method, we have systems. Everybody just keep the ideas coming. You keep track of them. We all bring different skill sets to the team. And I think where we butt heads at home and at work is when we expect the other team members to have the exact same skills that we have, or to be wired just like how we are, instead of just honoring that we're all meant to bring different skill sets to the team.
I love that. And that's a great analogy. And it's a great point because it's even true for me at work. And I am, can see where Ashley gets her talking. I'm a talker and I'm the idea person. And, even my team, my family, my husband's like, okay, no more ideas. We're going to stop now because I could never run out. Like, I'm constantly inventing. And so that's also true. I love that. So if people would like to follow you, Randi, what's the best place for them to find you and to join your groups or see what to interact with you in your programs?
So I'm on all the social handles. The only one where I'm Randi Rubenstein, though, is on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I am Randi Rubenstein. Everywhere else, I'm Mastermind Parenting. And I have a podcast. I think the best place to follow me is just to start listening to my podcast. I have over 4 years of podcast episodes, and I really give out a lot of information and a lot of content. You can learn a ton from just listening to my podcast. And I think that's the best way just to get introduced. And then from the podcast, when you're, if somebody's like, okay, I've been listening, but I'm not implementing, how do I actually take this and put it into action? That's when you book a call and look into joining one of our private groups, which anybody who's called to do that, or who's like, I just know I need that. That's the best thing to do would be to email me and let me know. I don't even want to, listen to any of that stuff, how do I get in your private groups? And you just email me, Randi@randirubenstein.com.
That's amazing. So that's awesome. And I love that you, have the different levels for people to be able to reach out and to listen. I mean, that's really valid. And I think that that's a good way for people to see if your messaging resonates with what they are trying to achieve. And I loved what you said first in the very beginning of this was you said, you stopped and reflected on yourself and looked like you had some work to do too. And I think that's such a valid and good tip for all parents, regardless of the age of your children, because I'm still learning. My kids teach me stuff every day, and I'm learning through their experiences just as they learn through mine. And so it's really beautiful work that you're doing, and I applaud your journey, and I love how you happened on it, but it became a passion and a calling for you. And so really cool story. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for having me. And just, what I want to say to what you just said is, like, if we're not learning and growing and evolving, we're dying. Like, I don't think we're ever fully cooked and done. And, I'm kind of on a mission to take the taboo out of talking about parenting, and it doesn't need to be clinical. Like, every single human is affected by parenting, because if you were born, you had parents. And then if you go on to become a parent, like, there's a double, you're double invested in this topic. And yet it's like, it's too personal. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to pretend that it's all, perfect, and put all the posts out on Facebook that make it look so perfect. But if you peek through the curtains of most people's homes, they're like, this feels far from perfect. And I'm anti-perfect. Like, I think perfection parenting is a prison. And I want us talking about this. I want us connecting about this. I think it's a fun topic. I don't think it needs to be so serious. I think that, the nicknames that you came up with, like, that's a perfect example of, like, we get to be real people and we get to have some fun with it. And it doesn't need to be so serious all the time. And look, you called her Ashhole, and what was it? Bratney.
Bratney.
And you raised two women who have now become, have fostered children and adopted children. Like, these sound like two amazing humans who are out to make the world a better place and welcoming children that needed a home into their home. Like I just love that's your example, that you had some fun with these nicknames, and at the end of the day, you raised two amazing humans who have so much love to give.
Oh, thank you for that. I am very proud of them both and very blessed. And it is. I think there's, I wasn't raised by a family or parents that put their head in the sand and just were very, we didn't talk about anything. It was a very open environment. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful I was able to recreate that with them, because our kids know there's no taboo topics, that it's a safe space. It doesn't matter what it is. They'll come talk to us. And a lot of people think, yeah, sure. Right. But it's true. And, they didn't get into a lot of trouble. There was a lot of respect. And I think that, that aided them in their guide into adulthood, of what to expect by not sheltering and shielding them, and having real life topics. So I've always been the advocate of, don't stick your head in the sand, pretend like it's not going to be you, it's not going to be your kid. Stay in touch, keep that communication open and free and safe to speak, and obviously respectfully, but having that open lines of communication helped tremendously for me along the way. We you talk about trauma and all those other things, that I've been going through some stuff, some childhood trauma resurfaced for me during the pandemic, because I was under a lot of stress. And so I think that it's just been it's been interesting to watch. And my husband and I have had a lot of time to reflect, now that our kids are grown and out of the house and raising their own families. And it's amazing to both of us that we got really lucky, because I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't the best teenager either. And neither was my husband. And to be able to raise two girls that are, able to, curate these families in this environment and recreate that environment that we created within our own home, has been such a beautiful thing to watch. So, if you are a parent out there listening and you have a strong-willed child or a highly sensitive or emotional child, or you have a hard second child, which seems to be a trend somewhat, I should run a poll on it, just because I'm curious. I advise you guys to listen in and to really dial into what Randi has to offer, because I can tell you, as a mom of two daughters that have started families, there's a lot of mom shame and a lot of mom guilt. And I didn't grow up with mom guilt. It wasn't really a thing when I was growing. And maybe it was, and I was oblivious. That's totally possible. But there's a lot that women face today. And I've had several guests as of late on this podcast that have either where they started out as photographers and the moms wanted the picture perfect families, and then things didn't pan out that way, right? Because like the photographer has to do 18 cartwheels and have six puppets or whatever to get the kids to get that perfect family picture. And, I'm such a advocate for authenticity. That's exactly, the terminology I want to use. And you're so right. Like, let's all just call it what it is and share, because there's no shame in that. And we all only can gain and be better because of it. So
Here. I agree with all of that. Let's as women, let's have each other's backs. Let's stop competing. Let's stop judging. Let's unify ourselves. We're so much stronger together. I heard a quote years ago, and it was something like, so many women feel like there's only room for one shiny woman in the room. And so therefore we constantly try to dull each other's shine. But the truth is that when you surround yourself with other shiny women, you just illuminate and you just all become shinier together. And I'm like, yes, that's what we're doing. Like, enough with thinking that another shiny woman is going to dull your shine. They're not. They're going to illuminate you. And we have to just do a better job of doing that together. So.
I love that. That's exactly. I'm a quote sharer, but I had seen that like it was like, you will not dim your light won't dim by helping another one shine, sis, and it's so true. And it can be so cutthroat and so competitive today. And, I would just want to see us all win. I'm a peace person, and I, want to see us all win. And there's enough. If everyone were to support one another, we could all just shine brighter.
Well, and when we compete against each other, we're really, when women are competing against each other, there's power in numbers. And so think about who wants to keep a woman small, right? Yeah. So when we participate in the judging, and there's and as moms, it's like the primo place to judge each other. But as long as that's what people say about my groups all the time, is because we're truth tellers. And they always say, gosh, there's just no judgment here. And one of my moms, she's so cute. She's like, she has a real Southern accent. She says, I just love it, Randi Rubenstein, how you can smack me on the butt and make me feel like you're giving me a big hug. So, I mean, we're truth tellers. I call my moms to more, and we do speak the truth, but there is zero judgment. And that's what they always say. And I'm like, because if we are judging each other, if we are competing against each other, then we don't have the power in numbers, and we will all stay so much smaller than we can be if we are coming forward collectively.
I love that. It's expertly said. I mean, excellent. Well, on that note, guys, I think we've run out of time this week. So that will conclude it. Randi, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today. I very much enjoyed this conversation, and I've gotten a lot of takeaways out of it.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So listen, guys, if you have any questions for myself or Randi, put them in the comments and we'll be happy to get back to you. I hope you enjoyed listening this week. Take care and have a great week, everyone.